Hello, everybody. Welcome to February Jozi.js. Thank you all for joining us. Once again, this year has started off at quite a speed. I don't know if any of the rest of you feel a little bit like this, but I definitely do. Either way, we're still hoping that maybe this year we'll be able to have a real meetup again with all of you together. But first, the important things. We have a code of conduct. The main big thing of our code of conduct is just to be nice and work together, respectful and constructive. And if you experience any problems with any parts of our code of conduct, you can contact any one of the Jozi.js Council of Wizards. Twitter handles on the side there. And if you can't get a hold of any of those people, you're welcome to also look at Jozi.js on Twitter and contact us there. Word's still out on the wizard hats. We haven't decided on those, but maybe one day when we can have an in-person meetup, we'll get those wizard hats. A quick thanks to all of our sponsors, BBD for the food and drinks for when we have real meetups, Inosys for our online sponsorship, streaming services, and Microsoft for our meetup sponsorship. If you are interested in speaking about anything JavaScript related, please submit a talk. We are very friendly towards new speakers. We're here to help. If you want to chat to us about an idea, but it hasn't formed yet, welcome to do that. Still not sure why we keep the QR code for watching past talks, since you're already on this YouTube channel, which means you must know where our past talks are, but it's there anyway. And lastly, we use Slido for questions, and you can scan this QR code. You can also find the same number in the description, and we're going to post the link in the chat so that you can post your questions on there. If you have any other interesting info or links to share, please post them in the chat rather than in Slido, because they do get lost in Slido after the meetup is done, whereas they'll stay there in the chat. And that's it from me. Now I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, and that's Ivan, and he's going to talk to us about Chrome DevTools.
Thanks, Kakana. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Can you let me know if you can see my screen already? Okay, great. So this present, first I would like to give like a slight introduction. Myself, I am Ivan Bila. I am a web developer at a company here. It's called Vodacom. It's actually a telecom. If there's anything that you would like to ask, or you wanna interact with me later, you can find me on Twitter. On Twitter, my Twitter handle is Ivan Bila. So if there's anything you wanna ask or you just wanna connect, you can use that handle. That's also the same handle for LinkedIn, so you can also connect with me there. At Vodacom, we work on an e-commerce app called Bazara. Which is an escrow system that connects buyers to sellers, and then the entire process happens on our platform of buying, selling, and the vendor getting getting paid, and the customer getting their orders. Also, another disclaimer is just the views and the models and the controllers are my own. This is just to say that anything that I share here is my opinion and my experience from tests that I've done in the past and so forth. I'm not breaking any company secrets today. So, okay, this is my place in the Holy Wars. I like space. I don't do tabs. We can be friends if you do tabs. And I like darkish themes. The only reason the presentation is a light theme is because I'm afraid you might not be able to see it in dark theme. And also I like Vim's rather than, I rather use Vim's rather than Emacs. And I like to use Z shell. I don't like to use bash. It's lame. I don't know why you would use something called a bash. So yeah. And I like Edison more than I do like Tesla. So that's my place in the holy wars. This presentation is mostly about, it's about Chrome DevTools, but since we know nowadays Chrome is pretty much everywhere, and you can open the DevTools of many different apps that have Chrome built in them. I think you can do that on Slack, you can do it on VS Code. So just so you know, there's a lot of different Chrome systems built everywhere. If you're a developer, what's interesting to you is to know like what are the different versions of Chrome and what can you do with this version. So I think there's 5 of them. There's the official Chrome release, and then there's the dev, and then there's the beta, and then there's Canary. The last 3, the difference between the last 3 is in the periodicity, which will get new features, and if they have the promise of breaking or not breaking. So on the official release of Chrome, their main promise is that they only ship features that have been tested and have been accepted. Whereas on the dev and then the beta and Canary, you have things that are either in development or are still being tested out. So if you're a developer, maybe that's something you want to try it out. It's still in development, but you want to test it and see how it goes. So that's for dev, beta, and Canary. I think Chrome Canary gets updates every single night. And I think dev and beta get updates. They get it weekly. It's a weekly basis updates. Whereas the official version of Chrome takes 6 weeks to get a new update. So if you want to try like some new things that the Chrome team is working on or is about to release, you can try Chrome Canary, beta, and dev. So since Chrome DevTools is like a big topic, I decided just to select 5 of these tabs, which I'll try to cover in this presentation. So there's the elements, then there's the console, there's the sources, the network, and the application. Personally, I think most developers just spend the most time in the elements, in the console, and in the networks tab. This is where we usually go when there's something that's not working, or when there's something that's working and we don't know why it's working. So I'm just gonna focus on these five tabs. I think that's it for the presentation. Just as a disclaimer, I'm using Chrome 88. I'm using Chrome 88 on Linux, on Ubuntu. So if there's something that's not working or it's working on my side, you should this is the version that I'm running on my system. So like I said, usually you will go to a website or you are building your own web app. So you want to know how you can toggle the Chrome DevTools panel. So there's many ways of doing this. The easiest one is just right click and then click inspect. And then Chrome is gonna open the DevTools panel and inspect the specific element that you just highlighted. If I inspect this one, it's going to highlight that element. Another way is just to click Control-Shift-I. If you're in Mac, I think it's Command-Shift-I, so that can easily open the DevTools. It can quickly open the DevTools, but it will not highlight anything. So here in the DevTools, you'll see all the tabs and a lot of instructions here on the DevTools. So I'll start with the Elements tab. I think it's one of the most straightforward to understand. It's pretty practical. It's where we usually go first when something is not working or when I see something is working. So in the Elements tab, we have this section of the page, which it just shows all the nodes or elements that are being rendered. And then we have another style for another pane for the styles and other things. Just something, so here, like these are all the nodes. This is all the nodes in the DOM tree. So if I highlight one of these, it will just highlight on the page exactly what it is. Generally, they will be collapsed. So if you want to expand them, you can just expand with this icon, or if you can just, there's an option to expand recursively. So it will expand all the nodes in the DOM tree. And depending on your RAM, this yeah, your computer might start making weird sounds. So you should be careful with that because it's going to expand all the nodes in the DOM tree. So it will expand everything recursively. So you have that option. And if I just want to inspect one specific element, I can just click this icon here and then inspect that given element. And then Chrome is going to highlight that element. And I can just see what exactly is happening. Also, if I just want to quickly search for an element, let's say I know exactly what I want. So there's different searching mechanisms. So the one that I like the most is called XPath. So with XPath, basically just do / and you say I want a p tag that's inside of a div. So it's going to show you the p tag that's inside of a div. A different way you can just search. You can just search for the element if you want. If you want something with the class of front, it's going to search for every occurrence of that word. You can search like this as well. But I usually use the XPath, which is much more fun. When I don't want to search, I just click the icon and then I come and highlight it here. A different way of inspecting something is there's an utility function in Chrome called inspect. So basically, this utility function you have to write in a query. You have the query for the specific DOM element using JavaScript. Usually, you can try something like document and then query selector, and you can write in here like you want a p tag, so it will inspect the first p tag on the page, which is this one. I think this one is hidden. It should be so. This is a model that's hidden, but this is the first paragraph in the page. So this is actually pretty handy if you do not want to search for the items using this mechanism. You can quickly just write like the class in here. So a quick test would be I can just copy this. I can copy this class, and then I'll come and search for it. So I can just write this, and it's going to highlight this specific element using a console utility function called inspect. So this is pretty handy if you do not want to search for the element that you know exactly the class or the ID. So that's how you can find a node element. So usually when you inspect something, if it's text, it will tell you like very useful information. So this is new on Chrome. It will tell you the color, the font, and I'm not sure if you can see it. I'll try zooming in. Let's say I will inspect this one. So it will tell you the color, the font, and also I think Chrome has something new called a contrast score, in which they tell you if the contrast of the node element in the background is appropriate or not. So this is the contrast score for this specific element. So I'm going to zoom out of the page. And also here, while we're here on the elements tab, this is something that I'm not sure if you struggle with it. So generally I have a hover. I write a rule for when someone hover over something, maybe that thing changes or it does some sort of animation. So usually I'll just struggle with that because when I inspected, the thing is gone. So I don't know if the hover has been applied or not. So there's something on Chrome, you can just right click on any node, and then you can force states. So there's multiple states. There's active, hover, focus. So you can just force the hover state. So it will show you like this orangish icon on the node. So this is how it would be if it was on hover. I can force a different state, which is active. So for this one, this is how I think the styles are applied to this one. So if I force the active on this one, it should show me it should show me here on the styles page what happens when it's active, what happens when it's over. So this is pretty useful if you want to see how an element behaves in different states. So this hovering and so yeah, if you remove the rule, the orangish icon will disappear. So this is pretty handy if you want to debug your app for different states. Also, another interesting thing while on the node on the elements pane is you have on the side, you have the styles pane, you have the computer, the layout, you have a lot of things here on the side that you can work with. So here in the styles element, it will tell you everything that's targeted for this given element, every CSS rule that was written and is targeted for this given for this node or element on the page. So for this one, it will show me all the rules that have been written to it, and also here you can see exactly which rules have not been applied due to the effect of cascading. So I can see this one was not applied, this one was not applied, and this one was not applied. So this is useful for that. You can see every rule that was written for this node element and the rules that have not been applied. And then you have the computer tab. Here on the computer tab is basically how the browser understands your rules. So if I expand, it will show me how you understood this rule. So if I have some sort of if I have a measure that's relative, then here I can see exactly how much does that translate. So if I say I have this element and then I just write something like the font size is going to be, let's see if you have a relative measurement here. If you have like, so for instance, like the position of this element, I can just come here and then write right. Okay, great. So the position, if you see the position here, it comes with values, whereas like the rule that was used for it is in relative measurement. So here is like minus 20,000 amps, but this actually translates to 44. This is left, so it is minus 20,000 amps, which translates to minus 44,000 pixels. So here in the computer tab, you can see exactly how a rule translates, how the browsers really understand that exact rule. And also you can see all the styles that have been applied to a given node element. So here on the styles pane, you see everything that was targeted for this node element. In the computer tab, you'll see all the styles have been applied to this node element and how the browsers understands them. This can be pretty handy if you want to debug. Usually when something is not working on the CSS, or when something is working in a way that it wasn't intended to, you can quickly come to the computer tab and search exactly for that property. If it's a color, you can just search for the color and see which color has been applied and which rule has been used to apply for which rule is the highest on the cascading. So that's how you can use the styles and the computer pane in the elements tab. Also, something that's really interesting is that like there's breadcrumbs and at the very bottom that's going to tell you exactly what's the path to this node. So here you can see it's in HTML and then in the body and then in the div. If you hover over, if you just try to expand it here, it will show like the entire path to this node element. So this is pretty interesting. So I'm going to jump. Also, there's something new on the Chrome DevTools. So if an element is using flexbox or CSS grid, it's going to have a label on it that says, okay, this is using flexbox or CSS grid. I think for CSS grid, it will show you like how the grid is looking here. For flexbox, I'm not sure if they've developed something that is similar to the grid one. So okay, I'm going to jump on to the next tab, which is the console tab. Also, something that's pretty handy for developers. You can open the settings. It's here. You can just open the settings if you want something like dark mode. If you want to customize your dev tool experience, you can just come here and change everything that you think should be different. So for indentation, I use 2 spaces, I don't use tabs. So yeah, you can pretty much just change everything. If you want to show the rulers, and so this can be pretty handy if you want to customize things. And also there's the experiments tabs, which is like new features that the Chrome team is working on, but they have not been widely allowed. So there's a lot of things. And also one thing that's really important, if you develop apps for any African country, is that you can actually add like a custom throttling profile, which is basically setting up your download and upload speed and the latency. So you can just create that profile here, and you can add locations. This is pretty handy. You just have to come here and change the things that you love to customize. So I'm going to jump to the console tab. I think this is where most developers, I have a lot of friends who are web developers. In my experience, we spend most of our web development time in this tab, actually. This is like, if you were to divide the number of days we spend writing code in a year, I would say the code we write, you can write in a week. And then the rest of the year is spent in the console tab. So there's a lot of interesting things here on the console tab. Actually, the console.log is not the only most interesting thing. Most of the time, it can do the job, but there's a lot of other interesting stuff on the page. So I'm just going to reload this page. Gonna take some time. Great. So let's say I was inspecting this given item, and I want to have a reference of it on the console tab. If you take a closer look at it, Chrome says that you can use $0 in the console to refer to this element. So if I just click $0, it will just give me a reference for that element. So I can make changes to this element, and it's going to reflect on the page. So that's something pretty handy. There's also a different thing. If you want to select a different element, you can click $S, $. So this will make a query for the DOM. If you wanna query for something, let's say you wanna query for this element, an element with every element with this class. So it's going to bring in like an empty array. I think it didn't find it. This usually happens because this page is using jQuery. So jQuery has control of the $sign variable. So Chrome calls when you call $sign and then you make these queries like this one, I think it's called like the command line API, depending on the page. So for this page, I think like jQuery has the control of the $sign variable. So I think if I just write this, so this is jQuery that has control of it. But if I just try on this page where I think jQuery doesn't have control of the $sign variable. So this is the command line API that has the control over the $sign variable. So for this one, I think there's a function in jQuery called no conflict. No conflict pretty much just it just gives away the control of the $sign variable. So now if I just call the $sign variable, it's undefined. But the Chrome team, I don't think the Chrome team has created a mechanism for giving it back the control of the $sign variable. So if you have jQuery on your page, this is not going to work unless the Chrome team fixes this, or they have a mechanism of getting back the control of the $sign variable. So you can only use a document, that query and stuff. So back to that part, so S0 is going to return the last element of the page. Another utility function that's pretty handy, I think there's a variable called app settings here. So if you see, it's an object with a lot of attributes. So if I want to copy all of this, it can be really challenging. So there's actually a utility function called like copy. If I write copy and then I just write the name of the variable, it's gonna copy the variable to the value of the variable to the clipboard. If I just paste it in, you can just see like it copy everything that was on that object. So this can be really handy if you want to copy something, if you want to analyze it, or you want to show it to someone that this how a variable is looking. I think I already showed I already talked about the inspect utility function you can use to inspect for elements. For this case, you have to do like document that query because the $sign variable, jQuery owns it. So yeah. So there's another utility function. I think it's clear. If your console if your console has a lot of errors, you can just use clear. It's going to clear your console. And then there's another one that's pretty nice. Let's say you have a variable called attendees. So you have an array of attendees, and then you can just say, here you can just say Ivan, and then age. And then you have, let's say you have a random array like this one. So let's say you have an array like this one. I think there's this utility function, it's called console.table, and then you can just type in like the attendee. So it's gonna show you like that array in a very well formatted manner. So you can see here the index, one of the attributes, and then this can be really handy if you want to inspect a given element or something, because I think console.log doesn't do a nice job of displaying. So this is the main difference, and this is the result of console.log, this is the result of console.table. So this can be pretty handy if you want to see what's inside of an array. And also here in DevTools, you can actually click this one, and you can filter the errors by, if you want to see the errors, if you want to see the warnings, if it's info, if it's verbose, you can actually filter that. And also a different thing, you can also hide depending on the level that you want to see. You can if you just want to see errors, you can just select here what exactly you want to see, or you can use the default configuration. And you can also filter here, and something that's really interesting, you can change here on this gear icon. So you can log ajax requests to your console. I'm not sure, like depending on what you want to debug, you can log them to your console. And then something that you can help clean up your console. So here you have this option called select context only. If this is not selected, this is going to show all the errors of the ad block. If you have extension, it's going to show errors from extensions and all other scripts that are not really important. So you can just select this. You can check this box that says selected context only, and this is only going to show errors or information from this domain. That's really interesting. I'm going to skip to the network tab. Oh, there's also something that can be really helpful. Here is called live expressions. So I can just type in any variable or like a DOM element here. So this will monitor like all the values of this variable and update them as they change. So this can be really handy for you to understand how does the state change, or what happens to the state while you do certain activities on your browser. So this can be really helpful. So I'm going to the networks tab, which is also another very interesting part. So I'll refresh the page. When you open the networks tab, it's going to be like really clean. Nothing is going to be here. So you have to refresh your page, and then it's going to load every resource of the page. So by default, this is not how your networks tab is going to be looking. There's actually a couple of customizations I've made here. I think the first one is, this is probably how it's going to look. So it's going to show like very small rows. You actually have to click this icon and use large rows. So this is going to show like a very large row for your requests. So here you have this table where you have name, status, scheme, initiator, all of these details. You can actually add more columns to these tables depending on what exactly you're trying to debug. So you can add URL, you can add like all of the other columns. So here you have the name of the resource, the URL, and then the status, the scheme. And I think the important thing here, especially for performance, I'm going to hide the URL and then I'm going to hide, yeah. So especially for performance, you have this size column that shows you two sizes. You have this one, you have 62 kilobytes for this specific resource. You have 62 kilobytes, and then you have 224 kilobytes. So if you hover over it, it's going to tell you exactly what does each value stands for. So usually the smallest amount is what the browser downloaded from the network, and the largest amount is the uncompressed size of that resource. So this concept of compression, so the server can compress any resource and then send to the browser. The browser is going to decompress the resource. So here in the network tab, you can know exactly what's the value of this, what's the size of this specific resource, uncompressed and compressed. So if these values are not different, that means that you're not compressing your files. So you should do some configuration in your server to use some sort of compression algorithm. Can be gzip or can be broadly, depending on how you're going to configure it. So yeah, there's that. So this is really important. And also there's this column called initiator. Is going to tell you exactly who asked for this resource. And it can show like the line. So here you see parcel. So the parcel was the one that went and fetched this resource. But depending on how the page is, it can show you the script that made the request. And also you can actually filter your requests. So you can only show like the ajax request. You can only show the css request, the JS or the CSS or the images. If you want to select two of them, you can just click Control and then select the ones you want to see. Something down here, you can see like a lot of numbers. So here you have 60 requests, and then you have transferred, and then you have resource. So the transferred is what it downloaded from the network, the compressed size of your resource, and then the resources is actually the uncompressed size of your resource, and the time it took to download this resource and do the parsing. So you can also filter by this. There's also this field you can filter. You can just write PNG. It's going to show you the PNG. You can write CSS. I think there's domain. You can filter by domain. I want to see only the Facebook requests. So this is going to show you the Facebook requests. There's actually a lot of handy different. So these are all the filters that you can use. The filter that you can use to select only what you want. So here in the method, I think you can write get. So you're going to show only the things that went via get. You can show post, only the things that came via post. So you can filter pretty much by everything. Also, something that can save you a lot of pain, I've seen developers going white hair over this, is to select the disable cache option, because usually you want to disable cache. Unless you're testing something related to cache, you want to click disable cache. So this is going to disable the cache, just so like you don't keep debugging something that was already fixed. And also there's this option where you can set the network. You can set it on online, or you can set like fast 3Gs load, or you can add your own custom rules. Also something you can use for reloading a page and emptying cache. If you long press the reload page button, it will show you like normal reload, hard reload, empty cache, and hard reload. So for the hard reload, I think it's Ctrl+Shift+R. But yeah, if you like to use the UI, you can use any of these options. And also you can export all of the requests or resources that happen to your browser. So there's this option to export, and you can export to anywhere. and then you can just send someone else, like someone else can import. Where did I save it? Oh yeah, I don't remember where. So someone else can kind of import all of your requests, so, and then they can see exactly what happened on your end. So this can help you debug issues that a user had or a different developers had. So you don't face the old dilemma that works on my machine. So you can just export the request to the person, and then the person can quickly debug exactly what happened on their end. Also, something that's a different thing, you can actually open the console. You can actually open the Elements tab and the console at the same time. So I think it's, oh, there's a Control-Shift-P, which just open like this tab. So here you can quickly type something, it will take you there. If I just write network, I can quickly go to the networks. And if I just write console, I can quickly show the console. So here I can see the Elements tab and the console. And something really interesting about this is the coverage. So if I just reload this page, and if I quickly reload the page, gonna take a bit of time. So basically this tab is going to show me exactly like what is being used, what's being used versus what am I shipping to the users. So at the beginning, this is not like what's being used in the entire application lifecycle. It's just what is being used at this point of me viewing the content that's in the page. So I can view different resources. Let me just expand this. So I can see that I have 89% in my CSS, I have 89 unused CSS. In the JavaScript, I have like 39 unused JavaScript. So this can be pretty handful if you want to do something like code splitting, which is like the idea of code splitting is just getting fetching a resource only when it's about to be used. So I can quickly see, and also if I open, I think if I open this tab, it's going to show me exactly which lines are not being used versus, so these lines are not being used, this line is being used, and these lines are not being used. So I can take all of these CSS rules and put it in a separate file, and then just I can use code splitting to kind of request for those, because at this point they're not being used. So you have that for all of the resources on the tab. There's also something called rendering that's really nice too if you want to test different features. So if you use dark themes on your, if you're setting up dark themes on your web app, you can actually use an emulation, which is prefers light. You can set this media query. So one of the media queries called prefer the light scheme or the dark scheme. So this can be used for if you are testing for these features on your browser. And there's other different emulation mechanisms here, so you can use while you're testing for your app. So there is that for the networks tab. I think we can move on. We can move out to the sources tab. So one thing that I've noticed about like most developers is that we've been using console.log. I think this application is pretty large and doesn't have just, so there's this demo application from the Google team that they made. So the idea is like they just made a calculator that's bugging. So if I write 1 here and then I write 1 and then I add these two numbers, going to be 11, which is clearly wrong. By the way, if I just write 5 and 1, it's going to be 51. Like this is not correct. Depending on how you're doing the math, this is not correct. So I think the best way to debug this, I can just come into the sources panel and see exactly what's happening. I can add all the console logs, but I think maybe this is not effective. It gets the job done, but maybe it's not effective. So there's a whole tool set for handling these kinds of situations. In if you are debugging with Chrome DevTools, there's something called like the breakpoint, which is basically you say, if this happens, stop the execution, show me exactly what's happening. So there's many different breakpoints. There's ajax breakpoint, DOM breakpoints. So I'm just gonna go for the DOM for the event listener breakpoints, because I want it to stop when I click this button. So I can just come here, and I think it's under the mouse, and then there's the click breakpoint. So if I just click this, and then it's going to start the execution. I can hide this one, the navigator. So right away, it tells me exactly which file is handling that event. So I think like here it says that if the button is true, this is not something that I really care about. So here on the, when you are in debugging mode, there's many options. You can resume execution of the script. You can just step over this function. You can step into, or you can step out of the current function. I don't really care about this function, so I can just step out of the function. So I went to a different file, so it's called a get started. Okay, so it's here. So here they do a check if the inputs are empty. Okay, I can just step into that function. And okay, here they check if they get the first number, and then they do some sort of comparison. Okay, and they say if none of them are empty, return true. If one of them, if none of them are, if both of them are empty, return true, else return false. Okay, and something that's really handy, I think in Chrome, I can just highlight this, and then I can evaluate the selected test in the console. So I can just click evaluate this. So here, if I open the console, I can just evaluate, and it will tell me exactly what happened in this comparison. So I don't have to try to guess and try to fight the JavaScript engine. I can simply just highlight and then see what's the result. So here, I don't really care about this function. I can just, I wanna see the next function being called. Okay, in this function, they get this value. And also, if I highlight Chrome, it's gonna tell me exactly what's the value. And there's also something interesting here on the scope. It shows you all the variables and all the variables that that belong to these that are being used. So I don't really care about this. The get number returns 5, and then I can just go to the next function. Okay, step to the next function. Okay, it gets the second number. Let me see what's the result of the second number. It's 1. If I just highlight it, okay, I can just go to the next function. It gets the second number. And then here it is like none of the inputs are empty. Okay, I can just get to the next function call. And then there's this function called like update label. I think this is where things might be bugging. I can step into this function to see what's happening. So they get the first number, and then they get the second number. Okay, I can just step. So here it gets the first number. This is the value of the set, and then they get, I can step. So another thing that Chrome does, which is really handy, it shows you like after you've been through a step, it shows you the value for that variable. So this variable has this value. So this can be really handy. I don't think you can do this with the console log. I would have to add like multiple console log statements. And also here, here on the scope, it tells me the variables and then the value of that variable. I can even update the value. So here I can update it. Let's say I want to update it to 8. I want to test a scenario where the value is 87. So I can even update the value. This is really handy, and it shows me the other ones are undefined. So I can step. It gets me the second value, and then the step. So if you see like this is the value that I just updated, 87, and then the second variable is 1. So then there's this part that does the sum. So basically here they just take the first variable and then the second variable, and then they sum them. something interesting here, like I can quickly just highlight this, and this is going to be, so the bug lies in here, like this is going to be 871. I think this is mainly because like 87 is a string and 1 is a string. So what's happening here, coercion is just taking, okay, I'm taking 2 strings, you want me to join 2 strings, okay, I'm gonna join the strings. So I think what would solve this, it actually is just, if we parse it, if we just converted the strings to ints, so I can quickly just take this expression, I can test it, I can take this expression and then evaluate in the console. And then if I just try to evaluate here, so I can copy this one and then try to evaluate in the text console. So this is what was evaluated in the text console. That's the result. I can maybe change it here. I think it's the function is called the parse. Called the parse int. If I just write parse int in this one as well, and there you go. So I think this is what we wanted to happen here. So we wanted to convert like the string values to an int value. So I already have an idea of what's breaking and what could be the possible solution. So I know that like the problem is here. I can also add a breakpoint to this line, and the problem is here, and I just have to change it. So let's say I added, like I can just resume script. So I added a breakpoint to that line, to this line, and then I can try to render the page again. Also there's an option to remove, like deactivate all the breakpoints. So this will deactivate all the breakpoints I have on the page. I can quickly remove that rule, or I can just resume the script. And also I think I need to remove this on-click breakpoint, and then I'll just reload the page. Okay, so this is the file, this is the breakpoint. I can just quickly add 1 and 1 and see what would be the possible result. So if I add 1 and 1, it's going to, so this is the breakpoint that we just set. This is the breakpoint that we just set here. So this is a different way of doing it. You can quickly add a breakpoint to a place. Maybe you have an idea that this is where the bug may be, or you can just add a breakpoint when someone clicks a button, when an ajax request happens. So we already know like the bug is here, and I think we have the fix here. So we just had to like change this specific part of the page. I think this would be a good opportunity to show something called local overrides. It's actually a pretty cool feature of Chrome. So since this website is on the web, like if I change this and then I refresh, it's gonna be back to normal. So there's something really cool on the Chrome, on the sources panel. I think it's here. I think it's overrides, call it local overrides. I can quickly select a folder. I can just create a folder here, call it JS, and then I can open and paste it here. So Chrome will ask me if I want to give Chrome access to that specific folder. I will allow it. So Chrome will pretty much load like the entire page to that specific folder. So any changes I make to this page are going to be permanent on my local environment. So just remove this breakpoint, refresh the page. Okay, so now I enable local overrides, so I can quickly just come to this part of the page and disable this one, and then add. So here I just have to write. So here the fix was parse int, I think. And then I just have to parse int for this one. And also when you coding with Chrome, it actually has the autocomplete. You can pretty much use Chrome for like an IDE if you're working on a vanilla JavaScript app. So if I make changes to this line, Chrome is going to show me this icon saying I should save this change. And if I save the change, the icon is going to have a different color, meaning I made changes to this website. I can quickly refresh it. And then now, supposedly the issue, the 1 plus 1 plus 3 should be 4. So let's hope that's the output. And then, okay, seems like there's a bug in here. Okay, so parse int is not a, let me just see in the console, how do you write parse int? Oh, so the P, so this should be parse int like this. So I can quickly save it again. And now it works just fine. So if you look at the URL, it still shows like the normal Chrome URL. But then I've made changes to my local environment and I've saved them to this local override. So I can quickly make changes to this part. And then so now the bug has been fixed. So that's how you would go about debugging your web application. There's also something that I would like for other developers to use. It's called the log point. This is really interesting. So if I just add a log point here, and then I call this function get number 1. I added a log point in this line. I can add a different log. I can add another log point in this. So it's get number 2, and then this can come in handy. I have 2 log points. So if I just refresh the page, and then I just write in here 2, and then write a different 2. So this should be 4. I can quickly jump on this one. 2 plus 2 should be 4. Let me see. I think I didn't add the log points correctly. So log point get number 1. So here I have the log point. And oh yeah, so I have to write log point, and then I just write what I want to be logged, and then I just select a different one, add log point, and then a different thing that I want to be logged. So if I just change it here to 22, yeah, I think I have to refresh the page. If I just add like 1 and 0, and then click add the numbers. Okay, something is working. So the idea of log points is basically that if you can add the log point to any line, so it's going to log the value of the expressions on that line. Oh yeah, it's here. So you add the log points. I want to add the log points for these 2 lines. If I open the console, it's going to log the value of what I've logged here. So a more effective way of adding a log point would be just to wrap it in object literal. So I think I can just do this. Oh no, I can just write add it. I can just call this function here on the log point, and then so if the value for that, if when I reach this line, it's going to log me in the console exactly what was the output of that value. So this can be really helpful if you don't want to clutter your script with the log, with console.log. You can simply just use the Chrome log points, so you don't have ever to use console.log again. So there's a lot of more interesting things to cover in the Chrome DevTools, but I think my time is up, and I'm going to pass on to questions and answers. I'll pass it up to you, Kurt.
Hey, awesome! Thanks, Ivan. That was really cool. That was some things I didn't know about DevTools that I'm definitely going to use. We only have one question for the moment, and it is, what is the limitation of jQuery on the document object model?
What is the limitation of jQuery? I think basically the idea, like jQuery is kind of a library that was written by like a couple of developers. So I haven't used jQuery to the full extent, But for the things that I want to do, like which is basic DOM manipulation, it seems to work. So I would know exactly what are the limitations of it. So maybe that's something someone else, I don't know, maybe the library authors, but for the things that I try to do, which is making changes to the DOM, it seems to be handy. So yeah, I wouldn't know what are the limitations of that. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, Mike, you have an idea of what are the limitations of jQuery?
So it's interesting to be talking about jQuery in 2021, because when it came about in about 2006, it was because no two browsers had the same implementation, the exact same implementation for an eventing model, or for like CSS manipulation, or any kind of plugin support, or any kind of animation support of any value. So it was sort of like the baseline that made all browsers, gave you a stable base to develop off of. And then as stuff has been added into browsers in the standard, like document.query selector, I heard you mention, which was a big one. The eventing support has gotten better, and JavaScript as a language has gotten better. There's very little reason to still use jQuery unless you're interested in like the plugin model on top of it. And there's still some good stuff that uses the jQuery plugin model. So limitations, I think jQuery is a completed project, and I think in the fullness of time it'll go away. But yeah, it was revolutionary 15 years ago.
Yeah. And also, I think just to add on what Mike said, I think depending exactly on your target audience, you might have to use it. So if you're building an app for, let's say, an enterprise app for these companies that's still using IE, like the old browsers and all of
100.
these tools, like you would have to use jQuery because like the APIs are not stable, and JavaScript is like not just JavaScript, CSS, all of these things are not like as standardized as in the modern browsers.
Definitely.
So I think right now the only thing I think that's actually that I think might not be good for jQuery. It doesn't allow tree shaking or code splitting, because I think jQuery was created a long time ago, so they didn't have this idea of clear ES modules. So if you want to use jQuery on your project, you have to import the entire jQuery library. Whereas now with the different tools, they allow you to do things like tree shaking, and you can use it code splitting. So the idea is that you only ship the functions you use, not the entire library itself. So I think that is the biggest hurdle of jQuery currently, is that you have to ship the entire bundle when you only need, like, maybe you just need to query for DOM and add some animations to it, but you have to bring the entire jQuery. So I think that is that's the limitation of jQuery currently.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, we don't actually have any other questions. I don't know, Mike, do you have any questions?
No, nothing specific. That was really, really well done, Evan. I enjoyed it a lot.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Well, we've gone a bit over time, actually quite a lot over time, but that's no problem. So I think what we're going to do is save our next talk for next month and see you then. Just more reason for you to come back next month.
All right, great. I'll be around next month.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
Bye, everyone.